Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras.
And I'm Lauren Izzo. Coming up in this edition, the country gets set to enter a 3-week lockdown as coronavirus infections continue to skyrocket.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu lands in Washington ahead of the historic normalization ceremony with not one but 2 Arab Gulf states.
And major news in entertainment, including rumors for a Borat sequel.
Very nice. We begin today with history in the making. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu landing in the United States to attend a Tuesday ceremony at the White House, in which Israel will officially normalize ties with both the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain.
And this making for the 3rd and 4th Israeli peace agreement with Arab states after Egypt and Jordan. Netanyahu praising the coming peace at Sunday's cabinet meeting.
עכשיו שני הסכמי שלום היסטוריים עם שתי מדינות ערביות שנוסגו תוך חודש אחד. אני חושב שאנחנו כולנו מברכים, אני בטוח, על העידן החדש. אנחנו בפתחו של עידן חדש, ואני רוצה להבטיח לכם שכל אחד ואחד מכם, באמצעות המשרדים שלכם, יהיה לכם חלק בו, כי זה הולך להיות שלום אחר. זה יהיה שלום חם, שלום כלכלי, בנוסף על השלום המדיני, שלום גם בין עמים.
Now, the text of the deals have not yet been released, but both the UAE and Bahrain have publicly agreed to full normalization of ties.
Many Emirati citizens embracing the changes with open arms, and now many Bahrainis joining the chorus too.
والافكار التعاطف تخلي الناس يفتهمون الموقف الثاني ومع هاي الافتهام إن بيكون أفكار جديدة، بيكون أفكار مفتوحة، وبيساعدنا في طريقة الحلول أي إشكال، يعني مثلا اللي يكون بينات اليهود وبينات المسلمين ولا.
لذلك ما رأته قيادة مملكة البحرين تحت قيادة جلالة الملك المفدى حفظه الله هو قرار صحيح وقرار سليم وقرار جيد والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Meanwhile, the White House is reportedly following up with attempts to close additional deals between Israel and Morocco, Sudan, and Oman, with Oman publicly welcoming the latest peace with Bahrain.
But of course, nothing without its detractors. In Israel, protesters blocked the entrance to Ben Gurion Airport Sunday in efforts to delay Prime Minister Netanyahu's flight. The so-called Black Flag demonstrators accusing the premier of fleeing the country for 4 days of election campaigning while the rest of the country faces coronavirus lockdowns.
Then Bahraini government opposition groups, for their part, are condemning the normalization as illegitimate. Critics explaining that they see Israel as an illegitimate state and anyone who normalizes with it a traitor. And the Palestinian Liberation Organization, including factions Fatah and Gaza-based terror group Hamas, are likewise holding joint rallies decrying the agreements.
Those in favor of normalizing, however, reject the Palestinians' claims, saying that the new deals will ultimately benefit the entire Arab world.
لا ما في ولا 1% ضرر يعني للشعب الفلسطيني ولا غير الفلسطينية، بس يعني بالعكس راح يسهل الأمر أن لكل مسلم إنه يقدر يصلي في المسجد الأقصى. فالقرار راح يكون قرار إيجابي إن شاء الله.
And now to understand the implications of the signing of these latest normalization agreements, Dr. Yonatan Freeman, international relations expert from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, joins us now. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So we've been talking about normalization with the UAE now for weeks, but with Bahrain, they just seem to have jumped on the bandwagon less than a week ago. Why so last minute, and why not give Bahrain and Israel their own signing ceremony?
Well, I don't think it's really last minute. I think that what we're seeing in the last few years is that the Arab and Muslim world really wants to connect with Israel. I think it's part of 2 main reasons. The first thing is that both many countries in the Arab and Muslim world are getting closer and closer to their own citizens who are expecting solutions to their everyday problems, and that's something that we can help them with. And number two, the further away they get from Iran and the extremist elements backing Iran is also something which is causing them to come to Israel, a major player which is also fighting Iran around the world.
All right, well, as you've sort of alluded to and as we discussed earlier, every day that passes we hear about other Muslim countries having secret talks with Jerusalem and maybe following suit. So who do you think will be the next state to establish official relations with Israel?
I think it's really about who needs it most. I think that if you look at the countries around the world in the Muslim and Arab societies, those countries which really need our tools for fighting the desert, tools in the field of cyber, tools in the field of the medical systems, everything that they need to get ahead to the 21st century. I think those are really the first countries which will pick up a phone and talk to Jerusalem. And number two, really those which are finding that Iran is a destabilizing an actor in their own countries. I think also those regimes will be more likely to talk to Israel.
Dr. Freeman, where can we find Saudi Arabia in all this? They're the leaders of the Arab world. They're clearly supporting these agreements. So why not move forward, with Israel themselves and sign a normalization agreement?
Well, I think we have to realize that the Arab world is not always talking in a similar voice when it comes to public opinion. I think if you look at the UAE, for example, their public has for years have had connections to the Western world, international business, while countries like Saudi Arabia have been more isolated, their own public opinion more connected to maybe extremist elements that have more seen Israel as a negative factor. So I think part of what's happening with Saudi Arabia specifically is that they need more time to prepare their own society to accept Israel as a partner for the future.
And can you expect the Palestinians to ever accept this deal as more countries maybe even join in?
I think that the Palestinian Authority, which is claiming and they're announcing every hour that this is a stab in the back, I think that what they're going to be finding is that this shows that the UAE and Bahrain and others really have the Palestinians back. I think that these deals really bring more investment to the Palestinians, will also help bring the Palestinians to the negotiation table. I think that when it comes to this agreement, it's true that the Palestinian Authority is against it, but over time, more and more public pressure from within Palestinian Authority territories, I think, will cause a shift. And in the end, they'll accept these agreements as something positive and not negative.
All right, Dr. Freeman, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Right. Well, in the backdrop of all these historic deals about to be signed in Washington, Netanyahu is departing the country at a pressing time.
That's right. His flight to Washington leaving just hours after the announcement of a 3-week nationwide lockdown that has shaken up the government during the worst health crisis in a century.
So what will those restrictions look like? Nittany Manson has all the answers.
Malls, schools, restaurants, and bars will be closed for at least 3 weeks beginning this Friday at 2 p.m. That's when Israel will enter a second nationwide lockdown in an effort to curb the rise of the COVID-19 infection rate.
קיבלנו את ההחלטות למתווה מהודק לשלושת השבועות הקרובים, עם אפשרות שזה יימשך.
Those aren't the only restrictions, though. Israelis won't be allowed to go more than 500 meters from their homes unless they need essentials like food or medicine, or, of course, if they're counted as essential workers. Less than 10 people are allowed to gather indoors and up to 20 outdoors. Nightlife and shopping venues will be closed. Airports will be open, but if you plan to fly, make sure to check that your flight hasn't been canceled. These regulations will be in place from the beginning of the Jewish New Year of Rosh Hashanah for 3 weeks, but always subject for extension. Unfortunately, that also means that everyone will have to stay home for the holidays this year.
כשאתם מבקרים את סבא וסבתא, תעשו את זה בחוץ, בחצר, בגינה, באוויר הפתוח, במרחק 3 מטר. זה חשוב מאוד לבקר אותם, להיות איתם. שעתיים, אבל בחוץ ומרחוק.
Members of the opposition, including MK Naftali Bennett, are slamming the lockdown, calling it a blow to small businesses. And the finance ministry is projecting this new lockdown could result in the loss to the economy of more than 6 billion shekels. Netanyahu says the latest lockdown is the only way to reduce the country's rising mortality rate, as Israel's death toll hits 1,126 and 3,182 cases recorded since Sunday. According to Israel's health ministry, once the daily infection rate dips below 1,000 cases, we may be able to ease the latest restrictions.
Now, it often seems like all we're hearing about is how coronavirus is affecting the health ministry, the government, and other far-reaching organizations. But what about our neighbors, our friends, your local hairdresser, the owner of your favorite pub?
What about the nail salon? Basically, anywhere you go for any kind of leisure will surely be closed for at least 3 weeks. We want to know what kind of impact this new reality is having on some of our favorite and small independent businesses, like arts and entertainment, beauty, and of course, nightlife.
And with us in the studio is Michael Cordova, the owner of the Gagarin nightclub in Tel Aviv, and Grant Crankshaw, co-founder of Center Stage, Israel's first English-speaking professional theater. Thank you both so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
All right, now, Michael, I'm actually going to start with you. You know, Tel Aviv is a city known for its nightlife, and now, again, your club has to shut its doors to customers. How is this situation affecting, your ability to earn a living?
We're not going to get any earning. In the last month, actually, we had to build a restaurant to make income from a different, maybe from Volt or deliveries. So that's the only way we're going to make any money in the
You've just changed the business model completely to that of an eatery.
We can't have any parties, no dancing allowed, so we don't have a choice.
Wow. In the last 6 months, how much have you actually been open?
5%.
Wow.
5%.
Okay, let's turn this conversation to Grant. Obviously, your business, a theater, is based on, giving audiences an experience. So tell me, how have you adapted in these strange times?
As soon as we realized that we could not be open and host the audiences and create that connection that you need physically, we switched to Zoom.
Wow.
Which is, it's a downgrade, but it's worked, and we've actually made a really good ground, connecting with theater groups in America, mainly, and also across the world now.
And the same kind of sort of live theater productions, or how are you adapting the actual productions themselves?
A live production doesn't work if it's not filmed properly, so you're crossing disciplines. But we're learning a lot of tricks about doing it on Zoom, and more importantly, I think our audience is adjusting to watching things on Zoom and still enjoying them.
What about, going back to the finance question, have you been receiving any sort of subsidy or any help from the government?
Not from the government as yet.
Not at all?
No.
Wow.
We're a small business. We're not a non-profit. So that was one of our first major...
Small businesses were supposed to get, something.
These are the ones that are losing out the most.
Well, you might have gotten something, but I don't believe it's enough to start fighting back.
Wow.
Michael, what about you?
We had to fight for every shekel we got. And in our situation, actually, we were a small club a year ago. So they had to look at the money that we earned last year, which is only like 10% of what we're supposed to earn right now. So we're still fighting, but we're not getting enough.
We're in exactly the same boat. We're a brand new business, and we just started. So when they start saying, well, what did you earn last year? It's like, well.
Wow. And, of course, the situation is affecting finances heavily, but it's also affecting, the mental health of small business owners. I heard a story during the last lockdown that the owner of a famous bar named Mike's Place actually committed suicide in one of the venues that he owned because of how hard hit he was in this situation. And I know you know people sort of in similar crises that have small businesses. Can you tell us a bit about it?
We know a few people that had businesses, new one, old ones, and also artists that committed suicide after the first lockdown. And honestly, we're stressing so much so we can understand, what happened to people in the night industry. It's really hard.
I'm wondering how you guys are coping with this. What are your mechanisms to be able to deal with this and continue with regular life?
I think one has to adopt a fair amount of denial and engage hope. That's what we've done. We've reached a point where finances are going to help, but if you don't have the hope to continue and the belief that it'll get better and we'll come around this someday, you're not going to get through it.
Absolutely. And do you see your business recovering anytime soon?
Gagarin is the story of my life. I've been working for all my life for this. I'm going to fight all the way. And if it's not going to work, I don't know. I really don't know.
Well, Michael, Grant, good luck. And, we're with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
All right, moving now to Gaza, where the COVID-19 crisis is also not showing any signs of slowing down.
On Sunday alone, local health officials recording 100 new cases, bringing the total number of cases outside official quarantine centers to more than 1,500. In recent weeks, the number of cases skyrocketing. The Gaza Health Ministry has warned that health facilities have a capacity of only 2,000 active cases, and any more will cripple the system.
Meanwhile, in Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank, 486 new infections and 408 new infections in East Jerusalem. Then since the start of the outbreak, 250 Palestinians have died, including 12 in the last 24 hours alone. The Palestinian territory is currently reporting just over 12,000 active cases in the West Bank and Gaza combined.
Well, Rosh Hashanah is just around the corner, and charities are reporting a significant increase in the number of families seeking help and donations of food and groceries for their holiday meals.
The Israeli charity Yad Ezra V'Shulamit works hard so that no one goes hungry. Gedalia Gerfein is joining us in the studio to tell us about the important work that they do. Thank you so much for coming in.
For sure. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So first of all, can you tell us a little bit about how much food that you deliver or will be delivering in the coming days?
Well, I think what's really significant is that there's been a huge growth in the demand. So our normal output has almost come up by 30–40% to 50,000 baskets we're hoping to deliver between Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot.
Gedalia, what kind of people are you helping? Meaning, what part of society are they coming from within Israel?
See, that's also a changing dynamic. What we once upon a time would have called, I hate to use the term, classical poor. Today you have the new poor. And that's people, as you were just interviewing, who are suffering in the corona situation. And so now today it goes across the gamut of all society. Plus the fact that we deal with every sector, from Haredi to Dati to not religious to Arab. It makes no difference. Everybody has to eat.
So, are you operating across the country, or are there maybe specific areas that you're located?
We have 3 primary distribution centers, one up in Tzfat, one in Bat Yam, and one in Jerusalem. There we hub from.
And from there, you are kind of sending out to the entire country?
Yes, wow. Correct. In fact, we also had children's centers for after school and opportunities like that, but because of Corona, now that that's been shut down, we deliver their food at least to their homes.
So during the coronavirus crisis, how much has that need actually increased? Can you give us some idea?
Oh, I would say it's doubled. I mean, because you have, again, you had the people that were already in desperate situations have now become even more desperate, and people who are borderline have now crossed that line into being desperate themselves. It's very serious. So,
all right, now I feel like at this point we should maybe emphasize that according to the government at least, you're not qualified as an essential service. So how does that factor into the services that you are providing?
Which government is that? I'm just kidding, because actually we are qualified in a sense because we are allowed to continue our distributions even during the lockdown. We work closely with the IDF and with the essential services providing the food.
Of course, food is one of the things that during the lockdown we're allowed to go more than 500 meters from our house, so it's important to note that you guys can still work even though there will be a 3-week lockdown.
Right. I mean, the big setback for us is our volunteers. We've had every single week you could come and you see people with and without yarmulkes side by side packing the food and delivering it. So we still have the delivery systems, but manpower is a little bit more limited.
So the volunteers are not actually considered to be essential workers as part of your business?
Yeah, some of them have to be qualified to do so, right?
Is there like a process about going through that, and qualifying your
this I don't know.
Volunteers?
I don't know.
Oh, man. All right, well, so, I understand that you're asking for help and donations. So for anyone who wants to do that, what's the best way?
Well, I think the main point is, donations is not about giving a lot of money. I mean, it's wonderful if you can. But what people need to realize is even something like 100 or 200 shekels will make the difference of
something
one
like
more
$20,
yeah, one more basket getting into the home of somebody who's really hungry.
And you're not actively looking for volunteers right now because of the upcoming lockdown, correct?
Right. We're just looking for people who can help support our activity that is growing because of the situation.
And after the lockdown, if there are viewers interested in volunteering, how can they find out more about that?
On our website.
And your website?
yadezra.net/end-hunger.
It's a really great cause. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And up now, changing gears a bit, we've got a little update in the world of entertainment and culture with our own Emmanuel Kadosh. And I'm very excited for this rundown because I've heard some pretty crazy rumors, But Emmanuel, take it away.
I want to hear the rumors.
I know. Well, first of all, hi guys. I knew Aaron was going to be really excited about the first, and you're probably more excited about the second, but I'll just jump straight into it. They're both, you know, film related. So the first one, Aaron, I'm sure you've heard about. Borat 2, the movie, has officially been filmed and screened to a few industry heads.
I am super jealous of everyone that got to see that screen.
I know, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure it was a select few just to make sure that it was as good as the first one. Sacha Baron Cohen was apparently caught in Borat attire and costume, as he should be, about a month ago, which is when rumors started about a second movie.
Yeah, I'm seeing the clip now that the fans posted.
Oh my God.
So yeah, so I mean, if you saw that driving down the street, I would hope to think that you would think that the movie was coming out.
I think it was a lookalike. I wouldn't even expect it to be him.
Okay, fair enough. If it's 2020, though, you never know, I guess.
Maybe the film screening was like part of like, you know, a scene for his next movie.
Wow, you guys are coming up with more ideas than the actual plot, which hasn't been confirmed yet. The movie's apparently supposed to be released at the end of the year, and the plot, again, from unidentified sources, was that Borat apparently hears and realizes all the drama and craziness that he did in the first film and then goes undercover in the second film. It's a little unsure, and it's really kind of interesting. I heard something about Sacha Baron Cohen playing Borat playing Sacha Baron Cohen.
Wow.
So a lot to look forward to.
Acting, yeah.
You know, so it's exciting.
All right, what do you got for us next?
Yeah, so Bette Midler stars in a new HBO film called Coastal Elite. What the catch is, which I found really, really interesting, is the first scripted project to talk and focus about the coronavirus pandemic. So the whole show is filmed remotely and is filmed by Zoom. So it's basically 5 characters, either living in LA or New York.
Talk about adapting to the pandemic.
So basically how they navigate through the pandemic, and it's all filmed as if we're like in their houses and they're talking about the situation. What's super interesting is that because it was filmed remotely, they were able to change the script accordingly. So whichever, you know, upcoming major event was happening, they could talk about it. So it started off talking about, the show was supposed to be about politics, and then it moved on to the coronavirus pandemic. And then from there, any major events like the demonstrations against police brutality, they touch upon and they talk about, which I find really interesting.
So how much of this show is fiction and versus nonfiction?
So I think, well, what you can say is that it's definitely not the characters or the actors talking from real perspectives. Like Bette Midler plays Miriam Nessler, who is a Jewish New York City public school teacher that's gotten into trouble with the law before. So I can tell you from that that's not really her, obviously, per se. But it does kind of give you a more
on some
personal,
real life
personal perspective on what they have to deal
Inspired by
with.
true events.
Yeah, so, yeah, exactly, you could say so.
And really quickly, what do you have last for us?
Okay, so Bar Refaeli and her mother have officially been...
Bar Refaeli, the supermodel, of course.
Yes, the international supermodel have been sentenced. Bar Refaeli's mother will be going to prison for 16 months next week.
Tax evasion.
For tax evasion.
And we're looking at images right now of them entering the courthouse, so we can see that.
Close to $10 million in a case in a scandal that has seemed like gone on forever. And then Bar Refaeli will be doing community service for 9 months, and each having to pay $1.5 million in fines.
Wow, lots of interesting entertainment news going on.
Yes, you could say that. The first 2 more, though.
Yeah, I have some new things to watch when I get home tonight.
Emmanuel, thank you so much.
Of course.
Thanks a lot.
All right, and now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be mostly clear with warm lows of 74 degrees Fahrenheit or 23 degrees Celsius on average. Then tomorrow, you can expect a slight rise in temperatures to an average high of 95 or 35 degrees Celsius.
Yep, it's still going to be really hot. And now, before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. Why doesn't my dog do that when I work out?
My dog does. You cannot.
I'm jealous.
Cannot work out in my house without a dog in your face. All right, that is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.44 shekels to the American dollar.
And 2.61 shekels to the Canadian dollar.
For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Aaron Porras.
And I'm Lauren Izzo. Thank you so much for watching.